There is a Greek proverb: a society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. What are the greatest examples of this in human history? Joseph Bazalgette was a Victorian engineer who masterminded London's modern sewer system. In the 1860s, he foresaw the insane population growth, and when all the calculations were made on how big to bore the pipes underground, he essentially said, "Nah, let's double it." Now, infrastructure that would have been unable to cope in the 1960s is still in use today. During the Napoleonic Wars, there was a Royal Navy admiral who, when on leave, used to wander his country estate planting oak trees to provide timber for the Navy. It's estimated they are about ready now. Norway's sovereign wealth fund. That generation could have taken a selfish view and just taken the cash, or politicians just gone on a vote-buying spree. But it's independently invested and managed for the benefit of future generations. The Cassini family map, a first-of-its-kind map of France. It took 4 generations of family members and 6 decades to complete. Imagine being that second family member. Your whole life your father works on this map, only for you to work your whole life on it while raising your son to do the same. And it takes a whole nother life for it to be completed. In a very literal sense, the landscape gardens of Capability Brown. He carefully crafted these gardens, directing the planting of trees and bushes to create a beautiful vista, where it would take decades for the plants to actually grow to fulfill this vision. The Voyager spacecraft. One of them is the only object that's left the solar system. They're still sending back data, and they're each carrying a gold record encoded with information, our planet's greeting card to the cosmos. It's hard to overstate how much that project changed humanity's knowledge of the solar system. The Voyager probes were crucial to discovering volcanoes on Jupiter's moon Io, the first volcanic activity confirmed outside of Earth. Before the Voyager mission, Earth-based telescopes thought there were only a handful of rings around Saturn. Voyager found thousands of rings there, found thin ring systems around 2 other outer planets, found dozens of moons, and more other information than one comment can do justice to. NASA is still planning future missions based on information the Voyager spacecraft discovered. If alien life gets discovered on Europa or Titan, you can thank the Voyager engineers and scientists. Most of them could have earned far more money in the private sector. Being part of this effort was their dream job. And they won't see this work through to the end. They can't. Voyager began the planning stages 50 years ago. Human lives just aren't long enough. And they knew it. Roosevelt did national parks. If he never did what he did, there wouldn't be any today. Corporate greed would have wiped it all out. William Wilberforce. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/William_Wilberforce. He campaigned in the British government for over **40 years** to stop and prevent slavery. He was successful in abolishing the trading of slaves throughout the empire with the Slave Trade Act of 1807, and then the ownership of slaves altogether with the Slavery Abolition Act 1833. He died 3 days after hearing the Abolition Act had passed in Parliament, after a lifetime of campaigning for it. He is buried in Westminster Abbey, which is reserved for monarchs and national figures of significance. His campaign for abolition was the blueprint that figures like Lincoln soon followed up with. There are many generations living because of this man's choices. King Afonso III of Portugal started the plantation of pine in Leiria in the 13th century, which is now known as the Pinhal de Leiria, with the intent of stopping the advancement of sand dunes. It was then expanded to its current size by King Diniz between 1279 and 1325. And it's said that every time they cut trees, they would plant some more, so it would never disappear. Besides this great role in stopping the dunes, and thus protecting the agricultural areas, the Pinhal de Leiria is most known for supplying the wood used in the ships during the Portuguese discovery period, which ushered the country into its greatest period of prosperity. It may have not been planted with that objective, but the kings that did it over many decades, did it knowing that they wouldn't get many benefits in their lifetime, and it coincidentally ended up being of great importance centuries later. And in 2017, 86% of it was burned down in forest fires, and because our government is incompetent, it is basically all destroyed still, with less than 50% of the burned area being replanted, and most of it being replanted by the normal plant growth that happens, not by any government action. Public infrastructure. People got to live to see the opening of one rail line or bridge, or several, but the integrated network of public infrastructure that took 100 years to grow and is still growing. The giant cathedrals in Europe like Notre Dame would take over 100 years to build. So the person who started building it would work their whole life on it and know they wouldn't be alive to see it complete. That's not a Greek proverb. It's the invention of a 20th century Quaker writer, whose creation was appropriated in the 1990s by politicians in the United States Congress. They added the byline, Greek proverb, to make themselves seem more intelligent. Any scientific research that seems like a total waste of time and money right now, like the space race, medicines, nuclear fusion, etc. Some people might say we should just focus on improving morality and social justice, which is important, don't get me wrong, but let's be real. Humans are dumb as rocks and we're always screwing things up. So, I'm hoping that eventually we'll come up with some quick fixes that keep us from wiping ourselves out as a species. Susan B. Anthony spent her entire life trying to get women the vote. She was fined for attempting to vote, and spent years organizing people to fight for the cause. She died in 1906, a decade before the 19th Amendment was ratified. The Civil Rights Movement. MLK knew he wouldn't be alive to see integration. The old Japanese people who volunteered to clean up nuclear waste sites from the WWII bombings. They knew that they likely wouldn't live long enough to suffer the worst of the effects of radiation, so they did it to protect younger people from experiencing it and to clean up Japan for future generations. It's really heartwarming. Nye Bavlin created the NHS in 1948, died in 1960. Absolute legend. Sadly, his legacy has been slashed to tatters and continues to take damage. Joseph Bazalgette, the man who designed London's sewers in the 1860s, said, "Well, we're only going to do this once and there's always the unforeseen," and doubled the pipe diameter. If he had not done this, it would have overflowed in the 1960s. Mendel discovered, literally, the seeds of the hereditary system in the mid-19th century, but if I recall well, nobody took it seriously until the early 20th century, like 30 years after his death. My friend's wife, Anne, organic chef and farmer, https://i.imgur.com/1b47l5u.jpg, got cancer and died in the prime of life, leaving behind a grieving widower with a preschool child. As she lay dying, she got up and planted the next crop of vegetables, which she knew would not be harvested by her. Her memorial was held in a big greenhouse. https://i.imgur.com/yqtext.jpg on the cooperative farm. https://i.imgur.com/hcjlmsr.jpg people, shared foods. https://i.imgur.com/cgombi.jpg made from her recipes, with her vegetables. She literally lived this proverb. I'm more interested to know when and why so many old people stopped planting and caring about the trees to begin with. It's not as shady these days as the shade they enjoyed in their youth from their elders. EDA. Y'all know I'm not really talking about trees, right? A lot of the examples in this thread are ones I've heard before, though they're still great. One I don't see mentioned often is the written Korean language. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/hangul question WPROV = SFLA1 Hangul One dude, King Sejong, basically sat down and created a whole alphabet so people wouldn't have to continue using the adopted Chinese onja that were complicated and difficult to learn. His goal was to increase literacy among all levels of society, not just the wealthy elite who had the time and resources to learn onja. It received a lot of pushback from the wealthy elites, of course, but following the end of Japanese colonialism in the early 20th century, it gained popularity and is now the official written language in both North and South Korea. Hopefully we'll soon include nuclear fusion reactors to the list. Is a poor society one that cuts down the trees whose shade your children will never sit at? Mabel Pingwali was a suffragette. But because she was not a U.S. citizen, she knew that even if she succeeded she would still not be able to vote. Insulin patent was sold for $1. We managed to fuck that one up. But it counts as planting the trees, even if we're too stupid to sit under the shade. I'm sure there are more splendid examples, but for me it's every single act of kindness we do without expecting something in return. Every time we make someone feel good, or we act honorable even when we know it won't really benefit us. The best things in the world doesn't always come from famous men doing great things. It just as often comes from the millions and millions of people living their lives doing small acts of kindness and empathy in their everyday lives. That is how we inspire others to do the same. And I guess that isn't as grand as planting a whole tree, but maybe it's like being one of the grass straws that makes the ground softer to walk on. Bridges. You didn't do anything to earn that bridge. You didn't ask for it, pay for it, or build it yourself. You came into existence with a convenient way to cross natural barriers that would otherwise be massive detours to travel. Most of Jimmy Carter's action, Japanese people aged 60 or older volunteered to fix problems in the Fukushima nuclear power plant, knowing that they would probably die of natural causes before the radiation damaged them in the long run. I don't know if they actually did it though. I live in Denmark. The health service I get today was built over 70 years in the 20th century, and saw a massive expansion under Thorvald Stauning, the greatest ever Danish PM, and became completely free in the 70s. Now the right keeps trying to dismantle a system that works. Every time a flaw appears, it is as a direct result of mismanagement of the right-wing, liberal libertarian parties. The healthcare reform of 2007 was the single worst piece of Danish legislation ever made. It focused on centralization, trying to cut costs by closing small local hospitals and opening mega hospitals. Literally any country with a robust social safety net on a more simple scale. Leaving a home or vehicle for your kids. It makes a huge difference for them taking off in life. Having the ability to be mobile where public transport, let's face it, is crap, is a huge win both economically and psychological. Having a place to stay, while saving dollar on rent or mortgage, can catapult their lifelong projections of success. Sure, I could reverse mortgage and play up my golden years into dying senior days, but leaving it to the kids over the years should be a family goal.